No. Okay, it is 4:01, and I'll go ahead and call this planning commission meeting to order. Do a roll call of planning commission members, Joey Edwards.
Here.
Jason Rufo.
Here, sorry, I'm on Zoom. This is the last minute thing.
No worries. David Urich.
Here.
And Heather Lind here. We will get commissioners in the room for the second one, but I know we have Commissioner Lee is here.
Yep, here.
And, we actually, you're welcome to stay on and listen to the backcountry application. That's the first item on the agenda, or we can text you when we're ready for the second work session portion that we need you for.
How does this work procedurally? Is this something that I'm gonna have a decision on later, or?
No, this is just the backcountry, site plan review that just gets approved through us.
Okay, I'll stick around.
Okay, cool. We have minutes to approve from July 13th and August 10th. And I did see both of those. We have a motion to approve.
They are both there. David, did you have any changes to make to the minutes?
None for me.
Yeah, Edwards moves to approve the minutes for July 10th,
July 13th,
sorry, July 13th.
not
I'll
August.
get there in a second, and August. I don't know where they went. Sorry, July 13th and August 10th minutes.
Perfect. Do I have a second?
I second.
Second,
All in favor, that is. Aye.
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 Sorry about that.
No, that's great. We'll get an update from staff.
Great, thank you so much. I think the first thing that we wanted to mention is that, we will have hearings coming up in, September and October. November, we're going to, that first meeting in November, we're hoping to hold the public hearing on the comprehensive plan, with, a tentative, decision by the board on November 17th. So just wanted to make sure that you're updating the calendar that Melissa maintains to ensure that we have a quorum. Also, our second meetings, regular scheduled meetings in November and December may be problematic for the commission. November 23rd is just a few days before Thanksgiving, and December 28th is just a few days after Christmas. So in the past, we've always kind of asked the planning commission to start thinking about those dates. If you'd like alternate dates for those November and December timeframes, or if you'd like to forego those meetings. And we might wanna just hold off making a decision on that, because we don't have any public hearings yet that we're trying to schedule in that timeframe, until we, you kind of hear the outcome of the planning commission interviews that are going on right now. That's kind of a good segue into that. We've had a couple really positive interviews with applicants wishing to serve on the planning commission. We have a third meeting or interview that we are trying to put together for, is that the end of this week or next week, Rachel?
Yeah, just whenever we can find time.
Okay.
We'll schedule it.
Okay, so Rachel's gonna be reaching out to see if we can set up another interview, with the intention of hoping to bring that in as a discussion item for your first meeting in September 14th, for a recommendation for appointment of some of the applicants. So that will really increase numbers and capacity, which will make it a little more convenient for everybody to have a life instead of always being super concerned if we're gonna have a quorum. So, but excited already for the interviews that have been happening. And we do tentatively believe that early indicators are that we're gonna have the CMC housing review in hopefully September. We've got Hayden Meadows or Ranch, whichever way you'd like to refer to it, is an upcoming PUD that's upcoming. Another substantial application that's in review in the planning department is the Lake Fork PUD, which is an expansion of the manufactured home community. We are working with Rue Policy, our housing consultants, on just kind of looking at affordability and what that means in these communities. We're gonna move into some focus groups with residents in that area to better understand the social and economic makeup of that community. And this also really leads into one of the action items that's coming out of our new comp plan implementation, and that's really looking at the zoning for all of these areas. And since we have the PUD application before us, this is a just kind of great timing to be leaning in and starting with Lake Fork and taking a look at this. Already talked about kind of the tentative schedule, but that's looking like is going to have more traction. Tonight we're gonna talk a little bit and give you during the work study part of the agenda an update on the strategic growth planning piece of the comp plan. But November 9th, I think, is really where we're headed for that public hearing. Wednesday night this week, first I should say we're making significant progress. Again, a part of our work session this evening will be focusing on the moratorium. And we've had some engagement that we're gonna talk about with the emergency management providers. And then this week, Wednesday night, we're going to be hosting a public engagement to really hear from the public on the proposed changes to rural lodging and event uses in the code. So significant progress on that and nearing the completion of that work. And so that's one of those, the first meeting in October that we're hoping to have good attendance from the commission on and the board. Angel View 2, we're still waiting on some critical review items that came up through the completeness review, particularly around access and water. That will be coming up for public hearing in the preliminary stage of the subdivision, but still waiting on some critical aspects to come in and be reviewed. So I think that is, and I'll just, do you have anything else, Melissa or Rachel, that we should?
On September 14th, we don't have any land use cases. We do wanna get somebody on board that day, make a recommendation to the board. So I wonder if we don't wanna do like a Zoom call for that purpose.
Well, and I'm not sure that we wanna, yes, we definitely, so I think some discussion, if we don't actually have something that we'd like to bring forward for discussion on September 14th, we certainly wanna hold that regular meeting because we do wanna make sure that we're talking about the interviews and what we'd like to do to move forward. So we'll see as we get a little closer if we've got anything that we would like to add to the agenda, or if we can maybe streamline that meeting into an online version instead of an in-person version. We certainly won't have any public hearings on the 14th. So it just kind of depends on if we have any other items that come up that think it'd be beneficial to be in person.
Okay.
That's it.
For our Zoomers, I have a DB on there and then one with a phone number, 331-4366. If you could either unmute and give us your full name or change your name on the Zoom for public record, that would be helpful, please. And hopefully they heard that. All right, we'll just move into our first item under new business, and that is file 25-30, which is 6663 Smuggler Backcountry Site Plan Review. We'll do the opening statement. The Lake County Planning Commission will now conduct a public hearing. The statement I am reading shall be incorporated into and made part of the record on these proceedings. The Planning Commission has jurisdiction to conduct a public hearing on a backcountry site plan review under section 5.2.27.1 of the Lake County Land Development Code. The purpose of this hearing is to consider whether the proposed site plan should be approved. In considering that matter, the commission will address the approval criteria that are set forth in section 5.2.27.1D of the Lake County Land Development Code. The procedure this evening will be as follows. Number one, members of the commission will disclose if they've had any ex parte communications. 2, staff will make their initial presentation. 3, the applicant may then make their own presentation. 4, after that, any other persons supporting or opposing the application may present evidence. 5, supporting and opposing witnesses may be questioned by the commission. Once questioning is concluded, no further questioning is permitted unless granted by chair. And 6, the applicant may then present any rebuttal evidence. The parties and witnesses are asked not to submit redundant, irrelevant, or cumulative evidence. If someone has already made the point that you wish to make, please simply say so. The chair will also require that all comments be made to the planning commission. There be no dialogue between the applicant and members of the audience. At the conclusion of the evidentiary portion of the hearing, the chair will entertain a motion to close the evidentiary portion of the hearing, and the commission will discuss and weigh the evidence. Then there will be a motion to close the discussion phase of the joint public hearing. The chair of the planning commission will entertain a motion on the application. The motion may take the form of any of the following recommendations. 1, approve the application with no conditions. 2, approve the application with recommended conditions. 3, approve the application with newly identified conditions. Or 4, deny the application. The planning director shall make a record of any substantial discussion on the motion and include that in the record with the decision of the commission. Are there any objections to the jurisdiction of the commission or to the form or substance of these proceedings? Okay, hearing none, I will now ask each planning commission member if you have any ex parte communications to disclose, and if so, to please do so now. Joey Edwards?
None?
Jason Rufo?
None.
David Durich?
None.
And Heather Lind, none. Staff can do their presentation.
Alright, well, good evening. This is an application, we've had a few of them this year that were sort of existing structures. So this cabin was built in about 1973 on 9.98 acres. And Mike Glenn purchased it in 2004, and we started working with him. I put this background in here because it gives you a little idea how we got here. So we started a site plan application in 2025, but it didn't get complete until, this evening. And so Mr. Donnelly, John, is here with us this evening, and he purchased the property in April. So now we're kind of moving this site plan and the structure license process forward for an existing cabin. So the cabin was built long before we had our backcountry zoning standards, which came about in 2021, as you know. So the cabin is a little bigger than what was contemplated by the backcountry zoning, and so the Board of Adjustment granted a variance that relieved the maximum building height, which is 20 feet, allowing the 24 feet that was built, and the gross floor area, which is restricted to 600 square feet, is allowed because it was built at 905, a little over 900 square feet. So there is also a variance granted in September of last year for the existing composting toilet and vault tank. So both those actions really allow the structure as it's constructed to move forward. And as you know, you would know, but it's for his personal use, and it's on a temporary basis, right? No more than 180 days per year. So this is the site plan, this is where the cabin exists, and this is the access road that kind of gives us an idea how you get to that cabin. There is some mining remnants that are in this sort of southeast corner, but the Division of Natural Resources looked at it and had no concerns about those kind of activities that happened long ago. So that's the site plan for this. It is in an area that is really defined as disturbed but low scoring habitat. There was a lot of mining activity, as we all know, in this area, and so this has low impact to our wildlife, and it's been here since 1993. So we don't anticipate any increase in that activity. Wildfire mitigation is an important issue. This is an area that I was in pre-evac. It's part of what took us a little time to get to this public hearing. And so, this was an image that's growing familiar to all of us in terms of how that mitigation should occur. And our former fire marshal is the one who brought this forward to the applicant and had these recommendations, which we're seeing pretty routinely and are important in terms of smoke detectors, fire extinguishers, having some sort of a trauma kit or first aid, so people are really prepared to be in a fairly remote area. So that addresses the wildfire mitigation. So there are approval criteria for these site plans, as you know, and the comp plan is always the first. And so we believe that the backcountry zoning itself really complies with our comp plan. And this is, while it's a little bigger than contemplated in terms of square feet and height, it really kind of matches with the low intensity that we expect in our backcountry zoning. It does conform to the code as you have seen in the staff report, and the application was complete as we reviewed it. It's in harmony with the other types of uses that are similar in that area. And as I mentioned, the Division of Natural Resources looked at it and had no concerns about any man-made hazards. So with that, we have 8 conditions of approval that are pretty typical of what we're seeing for backcountry. Again, there's a limited occupancy, both because of the zoning and the septic variance that was granted. The backcountry license is required, and we will work through that even though it's already constructed. Any soils that get revegetated, really, we need to follow the noxious weed plan from the conservation district. The CPW, the classification, really looking at best practices for living in an important wildlife migration area. And to follow the recommendations that we reviewed for the fire district, making sure that we have bear-proof trash facilities inside or outside of the cabin, that the light fixtures are shielded as required, and any other statements are made that are made tonight are part of the record and a condition of approval. So that really covers the application. We are recommending it favorably with these conditions. And I'm available to answer any questions, and John is here as well.
Great, thank you, Lisa. John, do you have anything you wanna add? Or-
Just that the cabin itself, it's been around for 30 years, it's held up incredibly well, it's very well built. And it is a 600 square foot cabin, so the spirit of what ended up being the backcountry laws, it's perfect, it's 23 by 28 on the exterior.
Yeah.
And it's the use of a loft, because it's a very high pitched roof, and that high pitched roof is reducing snow load. It's a 12 on 12 or 45-degree roof, which provides lots of area to use for a loft. But then that's a benefit because of it reducing the amount of load. And so the longevity speaks to the quality of construction, so I don't foresee any problem in inspection. And the prior owner, for the last 20 years, is a very meticulous engineer. And so I feel very confident that with the slight modifications, and we've already begun fire mitigation from the minute we owned it, was to begin providing a better barrier to fire. The dark sky compliant lighting is already been installed. We replaced the current lighting. And so it's installing a pump tank. The soils are conducive to a septic system. And so we have a variance to that septic for a single compartment tank. It has one currently, but it needs to be improved to a larger capacity. But with the composting toilet, it is sink water and that installation is particularly challenging. And so we think we can move through the process. We appreciate the board going through this, and we want to be in compliance. It's been just sitting there doing its thing, continuously owned, but there are things in the backcountry that I'm hopeful that other landowners are willing to go through this process.
Right.
So we want to work with this commission, work together, because I understand as well, this sets a precedent for what is approved within certain variances. So I know that it's important, the scrutiny is important, but I do know that from the get-go, fortunately, this was built in the spirit of those laws.
Yes.
Any questions that you have for me about plans or?
Planning commissioners have any questions?
Road access is reasonable.
Road access, it is a rough road, quite, but it is maintained by the property owners because it is historic mining road. The county does not want to maintain it.
Right.
The Forest Service does not want to maintain it. So it is for us, and we have a good relationship, and I've heard back from other landowners. I, previous to this and currently, own the touching property, 2026 Ryan, and that's how, and I've owned that for a few years, and so access through my property gets to this one and the other landowners, so it's accessible and we maintain it. And
Accessible for a truck that was servicing the toilet or something like that.
yes, a fairly small pump tank would be, or a pump truck would be able to, it's anticipated that I would, if it ever came to it, to have a transfer tank and be able to pump that out myself.
Very good, thank you.
As far as like a well truck, I don't.
Probably not.
Surprisingly, actually, I think some of
I've
the
met some
other
pretty
has a lot.
wild well
Yeah.
guys, but yeah, it's pretty limited as far as what you're getting up and down that hill.
And you're going through your property to get to this property, so
Right,
that answers that question.
just a direct access, yes.
Any other questions from planning commissioners?
This is Jason. I know you mentioned the benefit of the A-frame to the snow loads and whatnot, and I agree with that. But that like 2 feet at the upper level that's at below your knees, that's just unuseful in an A-frame. I don't know how you deal with that. So I just had to throw that out there.
Thanks, Jason. Yeah, I think my only thoughts, which sounds like you're doing anyway, but just for due diligence, is I feel like, the fire rescue recommendations should just be requirements. Like, you should have to put in the smoke detectors and the CO detectors, like they're just written in here as recommendations, saying that they'll comply with the recommendation, but like, I feel like it just should say that's required, because it feels like a
Is there water on the
loose
property?
space.
There's no water on the property,
Is there water on the adjacent property?
there's no water on the adjacent.
Very good, so a
Everything is-
cistern doesn't make any sense that, so the intention is to carry in
We bring in,
ongoing.
that's right.
Yeah, so I just, I mean, it sounds like you guys are doing it anyway, but I think we just wanna change the wording on that to be consistent in the future with any of these site plans, that it's not a recommendation, it's a requirement. And that's the only comment I had.
Yeah.
Are there any members of the public that have any comments? Well, you're not identifying yourself. Okay. I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
Edwards moves to close the public portion of the hearing.
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Count on you.
You ready for a motion?
I am, yeah.
That was quick.
Well, unless there's anything else we want.
No, did we wanna change one of these, the wording on one of these? Which one was it?
We just want number 5s to be
Number 5
requirements.
should be, yeah. Got it. Alright, Edwards moves that the planning commission conditionally approve file number 25-30, 6663 Smuggler Backcountry Site Plan Review pursuant to the standards of section 5.2.27.1 Site Plan Review, and further find that the approval criteria pursuant to the Lake County Land Development Code, section 5.2.27.1D, have been met as evidenced in the staff report dated August 24, 2026, for file number 25-30 and is conditioned as follows. Number 1, the occupancy of the structure is limited to the terms of the septic variance of 180 days per year maximum. Number 2, a backcountry license if required, ensuring compliance with the backcountry regulations. Number 3, applicant shall revegetate any disturbed soils, developing a noxious weed plan based on Lake County Conservation District recommendations. Number 4, the applicant shall consider best practices for complying with the CPW classifications to protect the important habitat surrounding the property. Number 5, the applicant shall comply with all recommendations as required of the Lake County Fire Rescue, including due to access limitations and distance from the closest fire station, Leadville Lake County Fire Rescue will have a delayed response or cannot access the site due to seasonal snowfall. Require owner install smoke detectors and carbon monoxide detectors. Require owner mount fire extinguishers throughout the structure, and require that the owner provide and stock a first aid and trauma kit. Leadville Lake County Fire and Rescue strongly requires owner mitigate property envelope from wildfire, guidelines attached. Number 6, there should be bear-proof trash facilities located inside or outside the cabin. Number 7, all exterior light fixtures shall have the necessary shielding to comply with dark sky requirements. Number 8, all statements and representations made by the applicant through the application and hearing shall be binding and considered as conditions of approval. And further finding that, as conditioned, the proposed site plan is in substantial conformance with the expressed purposes, intents, goals, and policies of the Lake County Comprehensive Plan and any ancillary county acknowledged or adopted documents pertaining to natural resource protection, affordable housing, infrastructure management, or any area-specific community plans. Number 2, as conditioned, the proposed site plan conforms to the requirements and provisions of this code. Number 3, as conditioned, the proposed site plan adequately addresses the submittal requirement items. Number 4, as conditioned, the proposed site plan is consistent with and in harmony with the neighboring land uses and future intended land uses of the area. And number 5, as conditioned, any potential man-made or natural hazards will have been adequately mitigated.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I second.
Any discussion on the motion? Okay. David Jurich,
Yes.
Jason Marufo, oh, sorry, I didn't hear you. I'm just asking for you to vote yay or nay on approval.
Oh, sorry, yes.
Joey
Yay.
Edwards
Yes.
and Heather Lind, yes. So that moves you forward to planning department to move along. Yeah. Thank you for bringing it into compliance.
Yeah, thanks for going through
I know
the
it's a lot of
process.
steps.
Yes, so we'll be in touch. Yeah, thank you for your time.
The next item on the agenda, and we can go ahead and text Elsa to join us,
Send out a text.
or go in there and grab her.
Just in case. Congratulations.
That was easy. There's no, when we approve one that was already existing, and we approve it as larger than, there's no grounds for a new applicant to come in and say, well, they did it.
No, cause that's the Board of Adjustment piece. The fact that they had to get that approval from them takes that piece of it off of our plate. Yeah,
That's my question, and I knew that there would be a.
I wondered it
answer
originally, yeah, but.
If we were setting ourselves up for future question, and no, we're not,
I don't
that's
think
great.
so. And I'm sure they got stripped because it was pre-existing, through board of adjustment. Okay, we have the One Community Project EPS and strategic growth element update.
Awesome. I'll go ahead and get the PowerPoint here. I think Melissa and I are gonna go over this a bit together. So, yeah.
The pretty picture.
And then do you want me to share it with our Zoom?
Yeah, let's get it shared, right, start from the.
That's first, yeah,
That
there.
one. We can start looking between those and beautiful. Ooh, that's dramatic.
Fancy.
That is a dramatic. So we're gonna start off by just kind of talking about why is strategic growth planning important? And really what this is, what we're looking at trying to do is identify where growth should go, what type of intensity it should be at, and what will it cost in the long term as far as sustaining this use and the cost to serve it. So it helps us make housing in more appropriate places and reduces the pressure on really pushing development out into what we would call as rural sprawl. And it encourages development and redevelopment and it helps us identify really those vacant and underutilized parcels and reduces the need to extend infrastructure and services that in some cases are very expensive and difficult to maintain. And basically, overall, what we're trying to achieve is developing in a very sustainable way. So also, the reason that it's important to have this discussion now is because it is a requirement that we're addressing through the comp plan. So Senate Bill 24-174 made this a required element with certain populations as part of your comprehensive plan update. Has to be redone every 5 years. And the required elements or the list of items that can be within this are kind of identifying those growth policies and tools that can be used, as well as doing an analysis and really identifying all the vacant and underutilized land within the area, particularly near existing transit or job centers, and then identifying what's really can accommodate that infill or what would be good adaptive redevelopment. And then also looking at what lands are currently under review for development and considering what is the infrastructure needs of that, what's the service level in those areas, and what's the long-term fiscal impact. So what we're gonna talk about this evening is a little bit of things that I think that we all kind of readily identify, but we're gonna really lean in and kind of understand what that means in Lake County. So EPS is our planning consultant that is working to develop the SGE or strategic growth element of the comp plan. We're going to really lean into those second and third items that we have listed there of DOLA required elements, and that's where are our vacant, underutilized, or lands currently in consideration for development. We're going to compare the opportunities and constraints of developing in two very broad parts of our community. So first is the city-county interface area. You're gonna hear us start to call that the CCI. And this is really like we talked about before, where jobs are located, where transit and centralized services are concentrated, what's within Parkville Water and Leadville Sanitation. And then the second category, of course, then would be our rural areas of unincorporated Lake County. And then from there, we're going to put them in, so first we're going to take the parcels into different categories. We're gonna look at infill. So infill opportunities are that CI or CCI area, including, so these are pretty much the areas around the city of Leadville, including some of the parcels in the north portion of the county, of where we've contemplated like gateway development and the areas just south of Highway 24 and North Highway 24, that intersection of 24 and 91. And then the other areas are greenfield. And so greenfield are terms of dispersed development areas and just broadly include everywhere else in the county. And so then we're gonna further classify those into whether they're vacant areas or they're underutilized. Underutilized means that relative to the size of the parcel, the amount of vertical construction on there is either 0 to 0.1% of development that's occurred on site. So the data so far, which is pretty probably recognizable, is within the CCI, the amount of vacant parcels we have, the amount of underutilized parcels, and just the total acreage. What we've found is that we've got about 15,500 acres of vacant or underutilized land across a little over 1,700 parcels. With a vast majority, 2/3 of this area is outside the CCI. The analysis is also taking in constraints like slopes and active mining and wetlands and flood hazards. And things that we already know, that outside of the CCI, expanding centralized water or sewer and decreasing emergency response times is really not a very realistic prospect.
That's a huge amount. It's
It
more
is.
than I thought.
Yeah.
But Heather, you're in real estate, does that seem like?
Yeah, I mean, the vacant versus underutilized
Yeah.
is the piece I guess I don't know what classifies vacant.
So vacant, meaning there's no improvements at all.
And underutilized has some improvement, but not very much.
Right,
Got it.
right.
I mean, 4,000 acres in the CCI.
Yeah.
Feels like a lot to me. I feel like every time I've heard somebody talk about like developable land within our county, they say they've said it's very small. I haven't heard that for a few years, but I'm just saying, I've heard it from BOCC members, I've heard it from county staff, I've heard it from all sorts of folks, so.
Yeah, the number that gets passed around is 5%.
Yeah, but 5% is more than like Chafee. Chafee's got like, anyway, that just
Yeah, it
wanted
is
to get your
interesting.
gut check.
Well, and the CCI, not knowing that total parameter,
Totally, yeah.
right? Cause if you're counting everything that's close enough to water and sewer, then the CCI is all that empty stuff on County Road 4. You know, you've got a lot of
Yeah,
boulevard,
yeah.
like I don't know where their
Okay.
boundary is.
Yeah, I'm really curious.
Because if their boundary and are they saying that central water and sewer is right there or it's accessible,
Yeah,
then you have all those vacant things down Boulevard, you know, so that would
Yeah,
make
yeah.
sense, then same thing with like around the college and stuff probably.
yeah, would this count, would the like airport industrial park, the 500 acres over there be in the CCI?
No, that would be
Okay.
outside.
That feels like it would be outside, but just.
Right, but just like
Yeah.
trying to know how they're,
Where
defining-
are those 4,000 acres?
I know.
Yeah, this is part
Can't wait.
of that, so we're in the very preliminary stages, so we will have spatial recognition of this with mapping to kind of
Yeah.
help, inform this, because it is kind of hard to get this data without, that visual tool to really identify it. But largely this is a combination of infill sites, and I can take a pause real quick if you have
Go ahead,
time.
Andy.
Yeah, I'm just looking at this very last statement. Beyond the CCI, the analysis found no realistic prospect of extending centralized water and sand and decreasing emergency response times. Is this basically saying that they were looking at all three of those criteria hand in hand, or that And by how much? Like decreasing emergency response times by 5%, or was it only increased by a little bit? Like that one leaves a lot of gray area to me.
Really good question, and we're writing, some of this down or taking notes this evening to go back to the consultant to ask those kind of things. The report is we'll be talking about it in another slide coming up, who they are working directly with. So they're working with the districts, they're working with emergency response, they're working with fire, so they're really engaged to look at that. Part of, I think what, there are some constraints around emergency response time associated with the lack of having dedicated staff at the Southern Fire Station on, a daily basis. They do rotate staff out. So we'll get into more, as we, put the finishing touches on the report from EPS around where this information's coming from, because we've got one example this evening to share with you from my public works standpoint about roads and maintenance, as well as building roads, maintaining roads, those kind of things. But they're working directly with all of these providers to really look at what are the opportunities and what are the constraints that goes into informing this. And we're also going to, one of the things that it will also inform is what type of revenue would it mean to change some of these things, and where would we direct those revenues if we were able to establish them to make some changes in these areas. So great observation, Andy.
Part of the reason we don't have mapping for you tonight is the mapping, we saw a lot of errors in that mapping, so these numbers could change based upon that.
Cool. Yeah, some of the areas that we immediately saw were some of what they categorized as underutilized in the county. So when you look at outside the CCI of 22 underutilized parcels, we immediately thought that those weren't really classified correctly. And so that's one area too that we're questioning and thinking, well, that's not quite accurate. So we're really working on the accuracy of the data right now. So this will get refined about, yes, David.
If you're talking, we can't hear you, David.
I'm having difficulty unmuting myself. Is one of the filters contamination from prior mining activities? Because from a practical point, it seems like the cost is just prohibitive to try to develop those kinds of properties.
Right, absolutely. So, yes, it is part of what we are looking to have as a screened analysis to include. So this doesn't include the East Side Mining District. This also takes into account active mining, and so in this particular reference, it also includes sites like the slag project that's currently underway, as well as the mill site, as well as, so anything that already holds an entitlement or is being used hits that active mining, or if it's areas like the industrial mining area of the county. So those are not included in these numbers.
So it does include the Near East side, but it doesn't include once you get up to the mining district itself on the east side. Okay. Yeah, there's still quite a bit of the infill available.
And maybe like every single lot.
Right.
Yeah, I'm trying to, I mean, I'm
Well, then
super
I would
interested to
assume
see what they have.
I can't
And I would
wait.
assume that
Yeah.
includes that Leadville 9 at the
Mhm.
top of the ridge there.
But I even think about like, I know somebody has 4 single lots together. Like, is that 4 properties or is that 1 property? So I'm just,
Yeah.
it'll be interesting to see what happens.
We're so excited.
Yeah.
The takeaway was
Or
we're so
like-
excited.
Takeaway is we're very interested in knowing what this all is.
Show us the data.
Where is that?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
So there will definitely be more coming, and I am happy, Melissa, if you wanna take it from here. I think I did about half, and you can do the rest.
Oh my. Yeah, so it's interesting to be working on our comp plan and also talk about the city of Leadville, but since we have a joint comp plan, it's relevant. So this addresses sort of the difference in the fact that Leadville has smaller lots that are already developed, but there, obviously, we know there's lots of vacancy. These usually do exist though, close to water and sewer, so they're in a very different circumstance. So the key questions they're looking at have to do with the right mix of housing types, the densities, and the patterns, trying to sort of maintain the character of our community, so. And then the larger parcels that sit just outside the city limits, but also fall outside of water and sand district boundaries. So those are projects, places that we will be talking about as time goes by. So that, as Ann mentioned, there's a big section of the report that looks at opportunities and constraints and really interviews all of these districts basically. And looking at, and a lot of the outcomes you'll be like, yep, we knew that, but it really documents it. And quantifies some things like Lake County Public Works has 360 miles of roads. Like, you know, maybe y'all knew that, but things like that, which are helpful in terms of really understanding and quantifying some of these numbers. So that's a big piece that really informs and describes the challenges, which I think, you know, some of how a comp plan gets used are by people from the outside coming in going, do I wanna develop here? What does it take to develop here? How does the community feel about development? And I think it will really help kind of fill in that picture. So this is an example of Public Works, and looking at what the opportunities are, and then looking at what some of the constraints are. And obviously, as we know, and you all know very intimately, it costs a lot of money to take care of the roads that we have now, let alone add new ones to the mix. And so I think that's a lot of what this is intended to do, is really look at, when we add, you know, roads in particular, we add cost to what we have to do. And so how do we weigh that against what we're getting in terms of development? So that was an example. We can talk more about that. So the early conclusions are really looking at within the CCI is better suited to accommodate future housing growth in particular. And they really sort of divided it between housing and sort of non-housing areas. And we feel right now a little more comfortable with what some of the housing conclusions are. You know, I think these are things that we know, but again, especially on the state level, they wanna make sure we're thinking about it. So, you know, and especially if we look at affordability, it has to be in close proximity to water and sewer, right? And our emergency responses have to be, you know, quick and right there. So that's a piece of the conclusion. The county and service providers are challenged by the existing pattern of undeveloped and previously platted lots in some of the unincorporated areas. So, you know, I think about the conversation we had tonight, which isn't exactly what we're talking about, but looking at further out you get, the less response there is and the more responsibility people need to take for that. And then most of the development in dispersed areas are, you know, they're talking about our large second homes and vacation homes, which, you know, this is a conclusion and especially when you and we review the final draft, is that really a conclusion that we wanna draw, but is saying that, you know, this doesn't serve our local population as we know, so. And then in dispersed areas, there's unlikely to be enough development demand to really increase, you know, to generate the level of, it takes a lot of density to pay for the extension of any municipal level water and sewer. And so I think we know, and a lot of the mapping in our comp plan really supports, like, where do we want that? If we really are gonna grow and extend services, it probably needs to be very close in to what we have right now. And certainly not in our more dispersed areas.
So really quick on that, cause I think this to me is one of our biggest problems, is that it isn't municipal water and sewer. I mean, I would argue right now that it might be cheaper to drill a well than pay a Parkville water tap fee and pull a water line. So it's where, I mean, are they taking that kind of stuff into account? Because it's like, I mean, the Leadville sanitation costs are so high now that it's like, if you're out of district, I mean, the people like, Westwood's house with an ADU, like their every other month bill is like $400 or $500 a month for a house in an ADU because they're out of district. So like what, like I just feel like that's a big piece, like, yeah, you can say that about pulling water and sewer lines, but and I'm not saying that's wrong, because you still have to have larger lot sizes for septics, but I just think like, that's a piece of the conversation that's like, if we were in charge of water and sewer like many municipalities are, this, like, all of that becomes even one step truer, but I just think we have a huge barrier with water and sewer, and what's our step with those two companies, I guess, to figure that out.
Yeah, I think you're, 100% right. And
With water concerns, going along with Heather's question, with water concerns, is there a chance that some of these outside areas won't be able to get well permits in the future?
Well, they'd have to buy water rights to subdivide, so for sure, there's a huge limitation still.
Sure, right.
Right, so
So it
dispersed
might be that they can't develop.
Correct, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, dispersed areas are just not, where we're gonna point our high densities to.
No,
Both from, not having centralized services or fire flows to support it, for proper fire mitigation, so, basically, it's also just talking about it's unlikely to be able to meet a development demand
yeah,
at those densities.
the density is the thing, and so I totally agree with that, I just go to affordable, and because we need to connect to municipal, I just, the two words don't go together right now.
Yeah, and it's not changing very fast.
It's getting worse.
Yeah.
Yes.
Absolutely, but I think you bring up a good point that our consultants, they know these things, are working, directly with the districts to build that awareness, but what is that impact when we don't have the ability from a municipal provider to leverage some options around affordability?
Yeah.
Yeah, and probably really articulating what you just said would be important,
Yeah.
I think. It doesn't say that right now. And we've had this conversation before, so we'll make sure that feedback is given. It just adds another layer. Okay, so here we're talking about the increase in service costs.
That seems like they're referencing places like Gordon Acres, the far out areas that potentially could be sparsely and slowly developed despite our best efforts. Where else are they talking about outside of?
Like, I guess maybe another Beaver Lakes or
Outside of
something,
Pan-
but I
well,
don't
yeah.
know, I mean, I guess
Beaver
they
Lakes
could
would be
say
another
that.
one.
We've
Yeah.
had some
Yeah.
large parcels off County Road 11A, that have talked about subdivision development.
Right.
We've had, so
I
there
see, so
are
it's that
some
kind of-
parcels out
So
there
there are a
that
few
we've talked
kind of
about.
in several different places. Okay, alright.
Yeah.
It's not just south, it's, yeah, okay.
So and that second bullet point that Melissa was talking about is that it's really hard for us to quantify the exact impact of these pre-existing subdivisions like Gordon Acres. The majority of everything down south
Right,
is all pre-1972, or we have that fund probate situation.
right,
So we have all of these properties with entitlements are basically the right, a use by right, based on those outcomes. And so that'll be a real kind of sporadic impact to our demand for services.
yeah, just thinking about Beaver Lakes, that's 30 minutes access at the best of times.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, also, no matter where you build, even if it's closer, that's more roads, period, right? So that's a given cost no matter where you're doing it, but I agree.
But if you're off of a
Irony
main
EMS is
artery,
most,
at least that minimizes that impact.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch that, what
So
did you say?
at least if you're on a main artery, thinking about County Road 4, County Road 9,
Sure.
those, then it minimizes that impact, but you're right, it's still
You're saying
increasing.
it's not one-to-one property tax to the maintenance cost.
Sure.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah, and I were commenting that sort of starts to really support impact fees. You know, so some of the background for impact fees, which is part of why we hired EPS to start with and then put them on pause, but it starts to get to that, what's the
No, that
cost
makes
and
sense.
how. Yeah.
Does it also support like districting as well?
Hmm.
Just
What
to,
kind of districting
I
do you
don't
think
know,
now?
like
Yeah,
I don't know, sanitation covers everything.
yeah.
I don't know,
Certainly
just
like
wondering.
Twin Lakes somehow has to figure out how to pay for the water
Right.
and sewer there, right?
These extra costs to the infrastructure that property tax doesn't support. You have to add some sort of extra tax just to that
Yeah.
area.
Or if they establish their own metro district.
Yeah.
Which I think is what you're getting at.
Yes.
Yeah.
district.
Yeah.
Which none of points to affordability.
No.
No. Yeah,
There's been a lot of contradictions, you know, from our mandatory things to, we do have some legislation that's been in conflict. So, from meeting affordability.
It'll be interesting to see the overlay maps for this.
yeah,
And they'll, once we get them fine tuned a little bit more, we're hoping to do that. We have a meeting tomorrow that the consultants are meeting with us to go over all the comments that we shared. But the biggest ones that we found that we gave them feedback on were the mapping. So wanted to go ahead, this was on the agenda, we wanted to give you an idea of what some of those early indicators are. And I think, you know, these are items that we all know, where we want to direct development, and those densities are towards the periphery of the city, within the city. But this gives just further refinement into your decision making and gives it an easier way for you to find compliance with the comp plan or not in a development application that would come before you. So just one more tool to be able to preserve, protect, and be really informed about the decisions that you make as far as land use applications that come before you.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, I think this is something we talked about before with previous land applications. It's like, okay, just because they're developing something, they're not necessarily developing the type of subdivision that is going to actually be
Right.
what we're needing, but we have nothing outlined, and this does that. This will at least help us form that and understanding where our priorities lie, and yeah.
What is the process for evaluating and then implementing impact fees in the future?
So this is a great study. You have to create a nexus, you have to create, you know, identify the amount of impact and then, you know, be able to apply that in some type of fee structure that's defensible. And so, you know, this is a great first step to go into that. So, like Melissa said, contracted with EPS, really identified that idea of wanting development to pay its way, to think about the long-term carrying cost when we add this. So what we needed to do first step was create basically a fee study, or we were starting to call it an infrastructure funding mechanism. Then this requirement came out from the state and we said, wow, this is gonna be a great way to start into that conversation so that we've got a solid defensible approach to looking at development paying its way and identifying what that impact is. So this is, you know, it's all gonna be very integral to one another, as well as this is a tool when we look at those future land use maps and we're trying to direct and identify what growth looks like in our community. This is just one more tool to find to it. So it'll do kind of has some duality here in helping inform those decisions, as well as giving us a basis to start working on that nexus for maybe moving into some impact fees or recommendation for some.
Perfect, thank you.
Yeah, I have a really big follow-up question. I might have a really simple answer. So with second homeowners or vacant properties even. Those folks who don't have permanent residence here or whose home is empty, they are not contributing to sales tax, which is a large portion of a county's budget to provide services as well, it's not just property tax. And they're also not working in the county, so they're not, or in the state even, so they're not paying state income tax, and then again, state sales tax. So does it, can we create impact fees that encompass that entire revenue that we miss from non-permanent residents?
It might be really hard to do through this particular, I think, more like the lobbying around the second home and vacant home.
Sure.
Taxing mechanism. This would be really hard because we're asking for development to pay for really quantifiable impact based on kind of the things that we're talking about, roads, emergency services, those kind of things.
Sure.
And so that's what we can align that to. How the property is gonna be occupied, it'd be hard to
You'd have to do a
identify.
tax, it'd have to be tax based.
Yeah,
South Carolina does taxes, but it's a state thing. I don't know that Colorado allows the jurisdictions to do it. So the state has to pass it where it's
Yeah.
not your primary.
Totally, I'm just wondering if this is a time where you can collect that information, because like we've talked about in this room a lot, the county does more than just roads and infrastructure. We don't even do like two of the major infrastructures that other municipalities do.
Right.
But we provide lots of other services, and the impact on those services is not just roads and
Well,
bridges.
I wonder if that impact fee study if the impact fee couldn't take that into consideration, because we have done a couple of neighborhoods. Thinking of one outside of Twin Lakes, where the entire development is gonna be second homes. There'd be very few primary residents down there. I wonder if an impact development fee couldn't take that into consideration.
we can certainly run it past EPS, they really do have their pulse on, we've got very stringent laws that govern impact fees and what we're allowed to consider and what we're not, but we can absolutely look this up. Is there any way to capture that impact?
That'd be great.
And see if there has been any, we're not the only community that's struggling with that kind of
Right.
feeling of that, we've got a community or a portion of our property owners that aren't contributing. And we've got that disparity, so we could absolutely see if there's been any approach to that. That's a great point. Yeah.
Someday
It's
the
a
state
big-
will give us a tool
I
to
know.
It's
to
a,
do
it's,
this.
it is like, and I'll just play devil's advocate that it's a big argument. It's, somebody can sit across from you and show you that a second homeowner pays more taxes in this community than a primary. And so like that's the problem, and that's probably why it's never like gone that far, so I think we would want to approach it from more of to me, it's more of an affordability rather than like our tax income.
Yeah,
But,
you need subsidies to also help with affordability, right? So where do you get the,
No, I know, yeah, totally,
yeah, I'm just wondering, like, I want to see
Yeah,
it, I want to see the data go all the way.
Right.
So I was just curious if this was the time.
where you could implement.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Anyway,
this sounds partly like it's connected to that vacancy tax discussion.
Yeah. We're all
Yeah.
trying to find, how do we find this through a legal mechanism, so, but we'll bring it up to EPS,
Yeah, just to see if that question's ever been asked before, I'm certain it has.
Sure, we'll get some information on that and bring it back.
I just wanna also offer that the only way to get the state to create any of these tools is to give them data, and they're not like collecting this data, so if this is an opportunity for us to give them any more information about impact, then I'd like to not miss the opportunity.
That sounds great.
Thanks.
All right,
Yeah, well,
well, here we are, let's see, where am I trying to get to?
I'm gonna go to our next share here, so you can stop sharing, we already did stop sharing. No, that one's the your CP. or your backcountry, there we go.
So this
So
very
you'll
short-
need to share it.
We gotta share it, so go into the Zoom. This,
Right in the middle, on the bottom.
nobody needs to watch me. You go to Zoom and then find it, there you go, alright. And then we get started from the beginning.
We say the shortest for last,
Yes.
so.
So, yeah, we're really excited that our emergency management folks were able to find time after all their hard work to talk about the moratorium. And so we met with them, and some of the highlights of what we talked about was, what are some concerns about campgrounds and rural lodging? So one of the things that we talked to you about was that accessory use. To be able to have event as part of an accessory use for that semi-developed campground use. And they like that idea, or their concern was going above certain thresholds. So, the thought of, and I think this was a shared feeling that you all had when we workshopped this last, is that 100 total on site at any one time for the semi-developed use. I'm gonna make you call on some of the things that we talked about a while ago. But that is, semi-developed is what we would kind of say is currently our group camp. That's not your brick and mortar scenario. That was we showed you a couple scenarios of that. So they did align with thinking that if we maxed out that occupancy at 100, that seemed like a good number to them, and that if we went beyond that, that might be hard, especially in hard to reach areas. And not allowing large gatherings in semi-primitive. So again, we had alignment with keeping it to a 32-person occupancy in semi-developed. We talked to them about a 20-acre minimum, so that we were immediately reducing the amount of parcels that this could potentially happen in the semi-primitive backcountry use. So alignment on that, alignment with the semi-developed at 100, people not to exceed that. And then when we got into those more rural lodging situations or modern or developed campgrounds, the numbers and the density made a lot more sense to them. So it was a good time to just check in about that, and there was alignment between what you all had thought in our last work session and what we discussed with them. So some of the things that they're really concerned about is access, and how only having one point of access, and really considering they're going to be working with us on drafting some thoughts around considering an additional point of egress, even if it's not readily used, but having a second emergency egress. And what are the benchmarks for when would this need to happen? What are the site constraints, and what are the numbers where, maybe this is also just like a showstopper. So they're really going to work with us to look at the access area. They did want us to just kind of better define with the fire department. We had a standard that we've written in the draft that the fire department would approve fire access. When we have a built environment with brick and mortar, they're required to follow the International Fire Code as part of the building permit process. But when we have tent sites and yurts that don't follow a building code, they were just concerned, like, how in those instances are we going to address it? So we are fine tuning that with fire, and then waiting to have further discussion with them on just kind of what are those benchmarks when we really need to have a secondary means of egress, and when is it a site that just simply can't support the use. Requiring Starlink or satellite for communications, so it doesn't, if there's cell reception there and it's adequate, that would be a sufficient communication plan, but when cell reception is not reliable, then requiring satellite communications on site. And then we're working together with them how to ensure that people utilize it and follow it. So we had some ideas around customer welcome packets and marketing that they could follow, like a QR code. They can get set up with Everbridge alerts. They can, so just part of the check-in routine for customers of sites that they would be required to follow certain protocols as part of their check-in to the site. So we've been talking about how can we effectively make sure that we've got processes to ensure that people are following this, and we can maybe have that point in time of where we know people are at, as well as that they're getting notified if we have emergencies in the area. So the other things that we are working on with them is we've asked them to help us create what a standard emergency plan should consist of. So we had some ideas, we gave them to them, and they're gonna further refine that with us. So that we can give clear direction on what should the emergency management plan consist of. And then we really wanted to, what are the risks of if we don't put some of these measures in place? They're gonna help us kind of scenario that out for the final public hearing and consideration. And just kind of looking at what is occupancy is reasonable. We were talking, I need to be kind of careful because this is going to be a quasi judicial hearing coming up, but we talked about some scenarios that they're aware of, and they were going to kind of do a little research and say, okay, what is reasonable occupancy? That's what Melissa and I struggle with all of the time, is just what is the occupancy load of a site when it's constrained, and we know it's constrained. So is there a pathway forward that really gives us some type of matrix to figure that out? They gave this scenario of having 100 youth on site feels completely different than a scenario of having 20 youth on site and manageable in the event of emergencies. So they're really gonna help us try to fine tune what that means, so that we have a defensible legal approach to that. And then we've been working on just reviewing, the Forest Service really looks at accessibility in a pretty articulated approach, and just seeing if that is something that they felt like really helps us kind of marry all of these thoughts together in creating an approach for looking at group camp, semi-developed camps in some of these more remote areas. Bless you. So, and again, not in backcountry. Backcountry is that semi-primitive, limiting it to 32 people. But even, we wanted them to even think about whether or not that's even a possibility. So the emergency management plan, they've added an evacuation plan, they've added including a 24-hour contact, and then the final plan being recorded with OEM. So making sure, putting the burden on them to record that, and so that it's already always at the ready for incident command in the event of an incident. And then just clarifying those alerts, and if there's reliable communication and the ability to contact 911 or emergency dispatch, and then adding, like we talked about, that Everbridge sign up and included as part of the welcome packet. This is just a comparison of where we left off with our code review were mitigating impacts. And I can take a real quick break. Are there any questions before we get into kind of how the code is looking at mitigating impacts? Anything on the emergency management side?
I have
the mapping that we're gonna be getting from the consultant for the one community project work we just looked at, will that help inform maybe how far emergency management can and can't? And what emergency plan will need to be a little more fleshed out?
Absolutely.
I would use that, but just double check.
Yeah, and these are all meant to give you great tools to be able to look at entitlement through a very coordinated lens that's complementary to one another, so yes. And so this looks at, so first, any entitlement that we do around these uses will first have to go through the site plan review process if it is anywhere but in backcountry. So in a site plan review, we're gonna look at all of these different attributes particular to the site. If you're in the backcountry, everything that is on the very left side under site plan review and including all of the things that are listed. So if it's in the backcountry site plan review, you have to do from roads and easements all the way down to fire flow adequacy. Plus we look at the degree of site disturbance. We look at slopes, we look at wetlands and water setbacks, making sure there's natural colors, discouraging things like fencing unless it's wildlife friendly. We look at more ensuring setbacks from different attributes of the property. We wanna make sure that we've got good fire mitigation plans. We wanna make sure that we've done an analysis on any hazards that might be present on the property, and there has to be a way to mitigate those. And then in the backcountry, we also limit the amount of the impact of the use. So those are ways that we're immediately mitigating any of the impact from development for this use. And then on top of that, we also have standards that are specific to the use itself. So whether it's a semi-primitive campground, a semi-developed, or one of the more brick and mortar, the rural lodging, or the more developed campgrounds, all of these attributes of the use will be in review. And there's specific guidance in the proposed draft that speaks to all of these different areas of the potential impact. Okay.
That's why you read the staff report.
That's right, so you don't have to know all of these things. This just goes into, and we'll provide this slide deck. I'm not gonna probably go into too much depth.
Information, sort of divided up a little bit.
Yeah, basically, just goes into a little more description on those items that we've already listed. And we'll share this if you have any interest in looking at this. And I think that's about where we're at. I think the exciting thing is that we are nearing the end of our engagement work. Our code draft is in review with the county attorney's office. And so he's reviewing that, and as soon as it's ready for prime time, we'll be bringing that out for your review as well. And meeting with the public this week to hear what they think. So the same presentation that we gave to all of you in the work session a couple weeks ago, we'll be adding just this little bit on standards to that presentation. We'll be doing that Wednesday night at college, and excited to hear back from the public and see what they think about the proposed changes.
And a lot of our property owners who are interested or have projects in this category.
Yeah.
So it's pretty targeted.
Yeah, we specifically invited anyone that was in the pipeline, anyone decided that they'd like to take a pause. So any interested parties that we are aware of are invited, as well as our economic development partners have been specifically invited, our natural resource partners, and the advertisement is out on the website. And so if you know of anyone that is interested in this topic, please have them join us. And the website is always a portal for public input. If you know anyone or you hear from anyone that would like to provide us their thoughts on the matter. It's at the ready anytime, so it's available. Any questions?
No, you guys have done great work on it, thank
Yeah.
you, that's good. Incorporates everything we kind of talked about.
Alright, well, we're
I
gonna get
know,
you out.
I know this has been a huge lift for your whole department, and I just wanted to say thanks to you guys for all the work that you're putting into this. I've viewed this as sort of like a deferred maintenance component, not unsimilar to the roads and buildings that need fixed up around here, and you guys have put a lot of good work into this, so thank you.
Totally agree.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for your patience in walking through it time and again, so.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
it's good,
All right, that's all we got for tonight.
awesome. Well, do I have a motion to adjourn?
Moves to adjourn.
I second.
All in favor? Aye.
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 Have a good night, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Good night.